Quite the same. Oh, I know. Oh, yeah. It's supposed to be a beautiful day for this walk.
Was that one of your shirts? Have you seen it?
He drug me up.
I really do.
Well, you know, it's only a piece of paper.
All right, good morning. You are in for a treat or in for a trick. I don't know which you'll prefer, but you're in for something this morning. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Sean Judge, and I work for Healing Hands International. You may have heard of that organization on several fronts. Maybe you've heard of the Magi Project. Maybe you've heard of Walk for Water. If you've not heard about Walk for Water, then I've got to have a talk with Matt after church, because he should have been telling you about something special going on today. But anyways, I serve, and I've been there for 13 years, 14 years, time's going on. I serve currently as the director of the Walk for Water program. So I have the privilege of traveling around the nation and spending many Sundays and Saturdays with awesome people. So I feel like when you say God's family is all around, I can truly say that. And so Lincoln Park is truly one of my family because of the many years I've been up here. I'm not in a 26-foot box truck pulling into the park this year with Magi boxes, but I thought I had gotten out of that this year. In a second, we'll talk about Magi, but then they're like, hey, can you cancel your return flight on Monday and drive the 26-foot truck back? I'm like, okay. So tomorrow I will head back, begin the journey back to Nashville with all those boxes from Brighton, Michigan, which is not too far from here. So what I want to do this morning in class, sermon time, I'm going to focus on our theme for Walk for Water, which is change the cycle, and we're going to go down a lesson of that. But for class, I figured I'd take the time to just encourage you and say thank you for what you're doing and kind of update you where you're at with some of the things you've been able to do. So we're just going to look at a couple of verses this morning in class, but then we're going to look at some pictures, and I'm going to tell you some stories of how Lincoln Park is impacting people around the world. So if you would, just turn your Bibles real quick to Galatians Chapter 6, 9 through 10. This is an encouragement this morning as we start off. We're going to look at a couple of verses here. Galatians 6, 9, and 10. It says, and let us not grow weary doing good, for in due season we will reap, if we do not give up. So then, as we have opportunity, let us do good to everyone, and especially to those who are of the household of faith. Lincoln Park has done a lot of good here in the community and around the world. And I want you to always remember that. Sometimes it gets really easy to get discouraged, and if you turn on your TV or turn on your social media, it can quickly become discouraging in the world we live today. And you can think, man, is anything good out there? But then you stop, and you pause, and you look through the eyes with a God vision, and you see things that are going on where there is. The media might not be talking about the good, but there's good in this world. And so I want to show you guys this morning some of those ways. The other verse I want you to read just this morning before we get into some is Ephesians Chapter 2, verse 10. You don't even have to flip far. I like to keep it simple. Ephesians Chapter 2, verse 10. For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. Every day when you wake up and you look in that mirror, do you stop and think that you are God's handiwork? Do you stop and think for a second that God has something in store for me today? He is challenging me to go out and do something good? And then do we go out those doors in the morning, wherever our journeys take us, do we look for those opportunities? It's a challenge sometimes. Every morning you think about it, when you get up, we are God's creation. We are his handiwork, his craftsmanship. We are molded by him. That's encouraging. He says, don't grow weary in doing good, and go out and do good. And when you're doing that in my name, when you're doing it for me to spread my kingdom, then you're going to see results. You just got to open your eyes. And so I'm going to show you this morning some ways that you all are making an impact around the world. So before I'm going to start with Magi, because that's another thing that you guys are very much in part of here. So 2 years ago was the last time I got to go on a trip before pandemic hit. So the December of 2019, I was blessed to go on a trip down to the Texas-Mexico border. And I just want to share with you a story that changed my impact on how Magi boxes are in my own mind, and let you guys see this story, because this truly connected how a box and a ministry can open the eyes and hearts of people for Jesus. So the work down at the border, there's a church down there that oversees church plants in the state side of Texas and also on the Mexico border side. So there's churches on both sides. And we went to both the Mexico side to deliver boxes, and then we went with this church, which I've been down there many times before. And this one church in particular uses the boxes as an outreach tool, and they do it almost like an ice cream truck. You remember back in the day, and now maybe they don't do it anymore, but I don't see it much, but that truck would come into your neighborhood and you would get excited and you'd be running because that music would be playing and you'd run out. They load up, and I took this picture up here to show you. This was all the Magi boxes for this congregation. They didn't use the boxes for their own kids. They loaded them up into their trailer there, and we followed in a caravan of vehicles, and they went through the neighborhood, street by street, knowing their community, had gone in there beforehand to kind of say, hey, coming this Saturday, there'll be something going on, be on paying attention. And we loaded up and we went out, and door to door, and I kid you not, kids come running out of their home to get a box. We get to this house. This is in the States. And there's a little boy who gets his box, and sorry, it gives me a little bit of chills because they start talking to the parents of this home, which this is not a very big house. They had started building their house, and the contractor basically ripped them off and left them. There's a lot of issues in that home. One of the things about the work that's going down on the borders, a lot of groups go down and help in the summertime, but they go and they repair homes, and so this became a prospect for a future project. And I need to follow up to see, I don't know if the pandemic changed that or not, but they got the opportunity to hopefully go back and help them. Their house leaks, just a lot of issues in that tiny little home. But they were there just to give a box, and you can see the box sitting on the bench, and the little boy, he was shy. But as I got to talking to him, this is the couple, and I cannot remember their name. I was actually the one taking the picture, so I was kind of off in the back. Next thing, something happened to me that showed me that God is bigger when we're unified. All the people from our group and all the people from that caravan surrounded this home, hand in hand with that couple, prayed over them, prayed over their situation. And in that moment, you know, Magi, which they've kind of shifted away from it, but, you know, had the M.A.G.I. making a godly impact. It came to life for me. It was more than just a box. It was a way to show God's love in a way which, without that box filled with those toys, maybe that kid would have a great day, which I know he would when he got his box. But look at the impact that was made by simply taking a box, going to a door, and next thing you have encouraged a family. I remember they were so overwhelmed with emotion, that couple, that tears flowed from their eyes. Because for a moment in life where life is full of chaos, where life is full of despair because their home with no financial way of fixing it is just what it is, and they've been ripped off, and now these people out of nowhere show up. And how do you control that emotion when people you don't even know come and show you that they care? And they tell you about the simple fact that they're there because God loves you. I don't know the story, the rest of the story. I don't know. But isn't that an awesome sign to know? And another thing about this place down there, another church used the box in another unique way. They set up a booth at like a local, I want to say fair, I don't know what it is, like a flea market or whatever, and they would promote their church by people come by and they give a box. One group I talked with, they they did similar thing, but they used the Magi boxes to promote their upcoming children's VBS in the summer, finding ways to impact their community through a box. So it's not just a box for their own children, which their own children, some of these would love to have that box, but find a way. And what I love about this is, you notice that there's little children and teenagers that are out that day on a Saturday, going into the neighborhoods where they live, giving a box. It's pretty powerful. It's pretty impact. And so you all have done boxes for years and years and years. I know that for a simple fact is because many years I've picked them up at the walk. And I know that they go all over the world, from Honduras to Zambia to the Texas-Mexico border. We're expanding that. We've sent some small shipment down to Paraguay. We were able to help a church ministry in Haiti last year when boxes were short, that they do their kind of own program. We were able to supplement where they were short in their own boxes. We started something recently that is new. We started working with some of our trainers in other parts of the world. So we have an ag trainer, a Women of Hope trainer over in Kenya, and we talked with her name is Janet, and said, hey, what about purchasing some supplies in country and putting together these things, because it's hard sometimes to ship, and shipping can be hard. And so she was able to go out, collect supplies, and then they weren't boxes, they actually were little school bags full of things just like they got, but it was bought in country. And now more children are having a blessing. And so the Magi Project continues to bless people around the world. And so I wanted you all to see that, because sometimes it's easy to say, oh, we filled up a box, and not realize the impact that's being made. But do know that these boxes are being used in so many different ways, that God's love is being spread. And there's a video they did a couple years ago that kind of it's a highlight. I don't know if you guys have watched it here or not, but it's on our website, and it takes the following of a little kid who's going to pack a box, and it follows his journey where he goes to the store, gets his stuff, fills it up, delivers it to the church or to HHI, and then at the end of that it says Magi changes 2 lives. Changes those who give or fill the box, that are you, and it changes the person that receives. But honestly, I'm going to tell you, Magi changes 3 lives. There's a third part that don't witness, but it's those parents, like in this case, that are observing, why does someone care enough about my child to give them a box? And they stand back, or that grandmother, or that neighbor, or that person in the community that doesn't understand the church, but then sees somebody getting something, they're like, wow, there's something different about those people. I want to be part of that. So Magi changes lives, and you all have been a great part of that. And so I want to say thank you on behalf of Healing Hands for your participation in Magi. And I could share thousands of stories like this, where you look at the screen and you think, wow. But this one just had something that stood out to me. And I was standing back taking that picture. And it's truly amazing when God works through people. That's all I can say. So, you're going to see this again in service, because I want to make sure that everybody here today gets an opportunity. But this is the theme from last year and this year. And we're not going to go into the theme, because that's where we're going to go in church this morning. But you have shirts from last year. Last year was a little different, wasn't it? You guys still walked, just walked in different capacities. Maybe you walked in a park. Maybe you walked around your neighborhood. But we weren't together. It was a little different. And you had a shirt, and the shirt's the same theme this year. We kept changing the cycle just for the fact is that it's such a powerful theme, and so many people didn't get to use it last year, even though you guys were one of the awesome walks that continued on even despite being virtual. But I want to show you what your impact happened last year. And I know that Matt's probably shared the book with you, the report, but I just want to take you back to this. So last year, the Walk for Water at Lincoln Park raised enough money to sponsor a well. And I want to just give you some information on that this morning. This is in Nigeria, in a town or a village, or however you want to say a community, called Madala. And I might be butchering that wrong. I'm not great at pronouncing names around the world. But the well was put in a church. And you're looking at this, and you're like, well, that's a little different than usual. Usually we see the hand pump. Well, there, just because of the depth and stuff like that, they actually have a submersible pump. They have actually access to electricity there. It's stable electricity in their communities that they can get. So they're able to put a submersible pump there, then pump it up into that black tank that you see, and then from there it runs out little spigots. And so it's still the same concept of the hand pump, as it's not a hand pump. And so this church now has it, but they're not just for the church. It's not just in a wall that says, oh, if you're a member of the Madala Church of Christ, you can have clean water. That's not how it works. That's for the community. And so you all, because of your efforts, because of your generosity, have changed the cycle for a community. And please stick around for service so you can understand what change the cycle means. I want to tell you a little, well, we'll get to the picture over here in a second. These are just some of the people at the well. You can see the little spigots coming out there. You couldn't really see them in the last picture. Nothing fancy, but you know what's fancy about that is? What's pouring out of there is clean water. Yeah. And, man, we could go on all morning, but I don't understand what it means to get dirty water. I have no clue. Dirty water, I don't understand that in my daily life because, honestly, everywhere I go is clean water. But for them, it's game-changing. What I love about it is the smiles. And that water looks a little dirty. I don't know why, but it's clean. I don't know. Sometimes it runs a little dirty. But look at the smile on that lady's face. You see the joy? They don't know you, but I know they're thankful for you. They have no clue where Lincoln Park, Michigan is. They might not know where Detroit is. They may have heard of the United States of America, but they honestly do not know anything about it. But one thing they do know is that they're thankful for you guys, for what you did to change their lives. So I want to go back for a second. I want to tell you the story in that book, and that book is actually, if you want to look at more of it, back right up over here by the door is the actual book. But I want to tell you about the lady that we interviewed there, how it changed her life. Her name is Awari Sampson, and I might have butchered her first name. She lives near this church. Here's what she said before the well came into place. The entire community used one reservoir for water. Not just for their families, but also for including animals. What happens, though, during dry season, and we don't understand that here, there's dry season and there's rainy season. In dry season, that reservoir dries up.
Sean, we understand that this summer.
You dried up?
Rainy season.
Oh, you understand rainy season?
Yes, we do.
But you didn't experience the dry season, did you?
Well, we've had both this year.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well,
Not
then,
as serious as they
let's see, okay. Your water didn't drop in your house, right?
No.
Okay, good. You had too much water at some point.
That's it.
And so when it dries up, they had to walk 5 kilometers to get water. Now, 5 kilometers, does anybody in here run a 5K?
I hate driving.
Over your life, you made it to 5K? I haven't made it that far. I think I'm at the 1K point in my life. I know it's like 3-point-something miles, correct?
Kilometers, 0.6, 6/10 of a mile.
So, but that is a one-day event, isn't it? That you run and you do it, and hopefully you finish it, and then you're like, I got to go home and sit down the rest of the day, maybe the rest of the week. I'm sore from running.
Take a lot of pictures, show them forever.
Yes. I'd be the one to take a picture at the start, dump some water on me, and then show up at the finish and take another picture and say I did it. No, I wouldn't do it. 5 kilometers to get water. Because why? Because they need it. But you all made that thing different. See, rainy season comes, dry season comes, it's not going to affect them anymore. As we speak, they're not worried about rainy and dry season. They're not worried about water that's making them sick. So what she said, though, Awari said, the frequency of water-borne illnesses among her children is now changed. I just, since I've last seen you, have been blessed to have a child who is now 14 months old. His name is Michael. And I am not the mother, obviously, in the situation, but watching my wife care for my son. And he's been sick the last few days. He's had some fever. You know, children get sick. But we have such access. We called up the doctor, said, hey, do we need to bring him in? Bring him in, we'll check him out. You know, give him some Motrin, his fever will go down. Give him some ibuprofen. Life goes on. But then I look at this and I read this, and she said, my children were frequently sick because of something that they couldn't control. And you all made that difference. And I hope that stands out. We hear water brings health, but water brings health. As a parent, you can stop and think, when your child's sick, it's a hard feeling, isn't it? You feel almost helpless because you can't help them. You don't like watching them. You'd rather be sick yourself, wouldn't you? And so this mother, Awari, says, and then, this is her statement, making safe, clean, and reliable water accessible to all of us is truly a miracle. This lady just used the word miracle in the fact that she has clean water accessible for her family. You all helped her to have that quote. And so I want you to realize, and I believe that is Awari. I hope that's Awari because that's who we assume is Awari. But her life is much better because of you all. I was going to read this at the end, but, well, we'll get to it in a second. So, what's really exciting is that we're going to celebrate today about what we're doing today when we walk and changing the cycle. But, well, I'll get to that later. So I want to also update you on something. So, you all have been faithful supporters of Healing Hands International in just many ways. And recently, if you were watching the news, you heard about an earthquake that hit the country of Haiti. And I'm sure Matt probably heard Haiti, and it automatically took him back to just a few years ago when he was on the 1,000 well trip with us. And so Haiti in his mind sticks out. But so a lot of people were like, wow, what's going on? Because we've supported Haiti so long. Healing Hands has a drilling program there. First and foremost, the thankful thing is that the wells that we have installed in those countries, we don't think they were affected by the earthquake. So, you know, if the ground shifts, we don't think that, but we're not 100% sure because right now our crew has been focused on doing some relief work, and I'm going to share about that in a second. So we've heard of a couple, but a lot of it we're just hoping the ground settles out, but we're keeping an eye on that. They just spent the whole pandemic going around and making sure that all the wells, and there's 400 of them in Haiti, were functioning. And then an earthquake hit. And if you back up time for Haiti, I'm sure you also heard that right before the earthquake, their president was assassinated. If you back that up, they spent 2019, before the pandemic, before COVID, in complete violence where they didn't like the president, and so they would just go out there and cause the country to shut down because that was their way of making the government change. So making the government change, they hurt each other. Don't understand that because, I mean, honestly, we could sit here and argue politics in church, but honestly, we live in a country where is the government really affecting your life? Are you at church this morning? Did you have any fear of coming to church this morning? No. We're blessed. Did you pass a roadblock on the way because some bad dudes wanted to stop you and take your money? No. So sometimes keep that in perspective. When you wake up, you're like, oh man, we're living in this country, everything's going to pots. And then you look at that, or you look at Afghanistan and you think about just the poor people who were literally being killed because they claimed the name of Christ. I don't have that fear. Nobody has ever threatened me for saying I love Jesus. They may not agree with me, they may make fun of me or something, but oh well. But let's go on and talk a little more positive. Sorry, I got on a little soapbox. So our guys, this is really cool because we got money coming in and we said, okay, and what it's a blessing in time. So we have a family that lives in Haiti, James and Abigail Rucker with their son Micaiah, and they recently just had, Boaz was just born a couple of weeks ago. So they were in the country when the earthquake happened, which has helped because James has been able to coordinate all this great stuff. But one of the things is we partner with some other Haitians. So our crew, we have 4 guys on our crew. They decided to travel out. Now where the earthquake hit and where our compound is not that far in distance, but it's a long drive, and it's a dangerous drive in parts. So when they go out there, they got to spend the night. And we'll get to that in a second. But here's some of the things that they did. We were able to send some money to an organization. This is not this, but send some money to an organization to buy clothes in country. So when the earthquake happened, they sent all the major injuries to Port-au-Prince. As they were closed, they just got them there. Well, when they're in the hospital, what do they need? Clothes. And so we were able to help with another organization there in Haiti, a nonprofit, and we were able to send some money so they could clothe them as they were leaving the hospital. We sent money to an organization who was housing and transporting Haitian doctors who were doing relief work. So Haitians are helping Haitians. That's what I love. But we were able to help those doctors in their logistics. There's a Church of Christ organization called Hope for Haiti's Children, and we were a big part of funding a team of theirs that went out to do some medical assessment and hand out food to people connected with the local Church of Christ there in the area where the earthquake was. And when our crew first went out, they built 8 community solar, or put together, not built, 8 solar street lights to kind of get some light there, and also set up 2 small solar power systems. But then they started working on these things. And we originally sent them out there on the first trip to build 10 of these homes. They loaded up their vehicles and got all the supplies, and these are temporary shelters that may very well become permanent shelters. But these are for those whose homes were literally unlivable, and so when the earthquake hit, it scared them, because in 2010 we know a big earthquake hit there. So guess what they did after the earthquake? Do you think they went back in their homes even if their homes were stable? They slept outside. Why? Because they're afraid. Well, right after that earthquake hit, a tropical depression came through. And so they were just sitting outside and getting soaked just because. And so we were able to build some of these. And so we started out with a goal of 10. And they got that done and they came back. Well, then we said, hey, we got more money now. We got more supplies. Do you want to go back? Without a drop of that thing, they said, we're going back. And just recently, we just found out they just finished their 48 of these homes. And these are Haitian guys. Some of them are part of our crew, but a lot of them are just guys that James knew and connected. So you can see them assembling these homes. Nothing fancy.
Sheet metal?
Sheet metal, some 2x4s, and that's it. They're a door.
Is that for a single family?
Yeah, but it might be for a multiple family. They all pile in there, you know. It's just a simple structure. Like I said, we hope that's temporary while their homes are being rebuilt, but we don't know the long term. They may end up taking the sheet metal and using it for other stuff, but they'll use it. It won't go to waste. And there you go. Nothing fancy. These were our guys, though. Actually, the guy sitting in the wheelbarrow with his thumbs up, that's Phoenix. And I think that's Patrick sitting there with the gray Walk for Water shirt. But they took some tents, and they spent 1 week the first time, and then they just spent another, actually, a little longer than a week. And they want to go back again. Why? Because they want to help others. Not because it's their job, because they truly find it as a passion of theirs to go help their fellow countrymen. And so they lived in some tents and worked. And there was a lot of days where they literally were just soaked from working in the rain, because they went out there on that first part when the tropical depression came. It's just amazing to see that. And some of the future projects, we got a lot. Healing Hands is always about not being just quickly spend it all, but seeing long term. But one of the things that they've already done is made a list of 300 church members whose homes need repairs. And so that's going to be a future project, is helping start building some homes back, or repairing some homes. But I thought you guys might want to see that. So, before we get to this verse, I want to give you, because you guys are special, you're in class, so you guys get to hear this. Do you guys ever wonder what the impact is? Does anybody in the top of their mind know what year this is for Walk for Water from Lincoln Park? It's actually the 13th. 13th. I was telling some people last night that you are tied with the longest running Walk for Water, and that happens to also be in Troy, Ohio at Mid-County Church of Christ. Now, if you want to take that back and connect the two, there's a name that we all know well. I know well, you know well, Ron White. Grandpa Ron, Techno Ron as I call him. Another family, couple that lived here, Warren and Marietta Whitelaw. They moved to Mid-County, and they started the walk on the same year you guys did. And in May, they did their 13th. So there's a little bit of pressure for you all that every year in May, if Mid-County does it, I mean, you know, there's some pride now at 13. You don't want to be the one, well, we made it second place. No, just kidding on that. No pressure, unless you're competitive, and then there is pressure. Plus, then you wouldn't have a chance to see me, so that'd be bad. So 13 walks. So I went back and I just did some research, because I love sharing the impact that's made, because sometimes we don't stop and realize that over these years. So this is really cool. So including last year's well, you all have helped sponsor 7 wells, plus countless repairs. Now you think about that. There's 7 communities in this world that have a well in their community because of you all. That's 7 communities that now have the blessing of clean water that would not have had it without you all doing what you do. There's several places where those wells came in place and they broke. Have you ever had your plumbing go out? Have you ever had it go out in the winter and your hot water go out? Anybody ever experienced that? I'm sure you guys do a lot here. Your pipes probably freeze a lot more than they do in Nashville. In Nashville, we don't know how to handle freeze, so everything just goes to pots. I always stop and I think about this because when our water goes out or our air conditioning goes out or whatever goes out, I'm not a handyman. Some of you probably like, oh, I'll go fix it myself. Not me. I got to pick up the phone. I got to call somebody and be like, hey, can you come out and fix it? But they come out and they fix it. Magically, they do that, and then they give me a bill, and they're like, magically, this is going to cost you a lot of money. But I'll never forget a couple of years ago, I'd been to Haiti several times, and I started getting in my mind to think of like, man, Sean, you go down there, you see it, but you come back and you turn on your hot water and you let it soak your muscles, sore muscles away. And one morning I woke up, and our pipes didn't bust, but they froze partially, and so the hot water was not coming out. I was like, I can't take a shower. I got to go to work. You want to know how blessed of a life I live in? I travel to work in my stinkiness. I really didn't stink that bad. I mean, it's just sleeping. And I get to work, and guess what's at our offices? A shower with hot water. I don't understand inconveniences. I don't understand anything. But when their wells break, unless somebody comes back and helps them, they lost that source of clean water. And I'm going to tell you this. When you lose clean water, those illnesses will start coming back pretty quick. And you all have made sure that wells are repaired and continue to. So think about that. Now here's something also that's cool. Because through these years, you guys have raised $51,000 for clean water. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. And you think about how many people have donated over those years and the impact that is being made. So I want to make sure you guys realize that you are making a true impact in so many ways. So I want to go to a verse that we're going to and I'm going to open this up for a little bit of Q&A here in a second. But this verse always stands out to me. It's in 1 Corinthians chapter 3. And I use this verse a lot or these verses, because I really think when we stop and read this, this is the attitude that we should have in anything when we're talking about being followers of Christ. This is Paul, verse 6, says, I planted, Apollos watered, but God gave growth. So neither he who plants nor he who waters is anything, but only God who gives the growth. He who plants and he who waters are one, and each will receive his wages according to his labor. For we are God's fellow workers. You are God's field, God's building. I wanted you all to see this morning the fact is that what you're doing is making an impact. But what I want you to realize is that we may never know the true impact that's being made. But that's okay, because who do we trust is going to give the increase? God. It's not Lincoln Park. It's not Healing Hands. We're the Pauls. We're the Apolloses. Well, we trust that God, in his time, will give the increase. And how that looks, we don't know, but we fully have to trust that he is working in all situations. And I sometimes, and we live in, and for me, every day I go into work because we're about this. And sometimes it can be discouraging to be like, well, why isn't there all of a sudden this massive visible change? Why aren't there millions of people coming to Christ? Why aren't there communities that are just thriving? Whatever the case may be. Because what kind of Sean world I live in is this? I like instant. I love instant gratification. Has anybody ordered something recently and it's on back order? Has anybody gone to buy something? I was talking with Randy and Cheryl Alt yesterday. They live across the street from Matt, and they were talking about getting something. They're like, yeah, it said in stock, and we ordered it, and then we got a message that it was out of stock. It'll be November before we get it. Like what? What kind of world we live in? No, if I want to buy it now, I always say this. When I go to buy my TV, when I finally get my wife to say, hey, you get a new big screen TV, I want to go out and get that TV today. Not tomorrow, today. And when I go to that store, I don't want them to be like, oh, we'll deliver it in 3 days. No, I want it delivered. When I walk out the store, you follow me, you take it to my house. I want to watch TV tonight. I didn't come to buy it for next year. Because that's the world we live in. Restaurants. Has anybody been out to eat lately? I don't know the climate. I live in the South where we are wild guns. We just go wherever. Nobody wants to work. So you go to a restaurant, they say, sorry, due to lack of staff, you will have longer waits than normal.
Same things here.
I went into a restaurant because we have a 14-month-old son, and we like to go at early time so we can get him on bed. At 5 o'clock, and it was like 4:45 in the afternoon to a restaurant. There should be nobody in there, right? We walk in, they're like, oh, you'll have an hour and a half wait. It's like there's like 7 people sitting in here. Lack of staff. But that's the world we live in. We want to go get our food. That's why we love drive-thrus, don't we? We love DoorDash or whatever nowadays. We want our stuff instant. And so this verse is hard because it tells us to take off of our own mind, our own wants, and say, God, you're in control. And in your time, whatever happens, we know that it'll be good because you're in control. And so what we see, what you guys have been doing, know that God is working through those situations. It may not look like how you want, but he's working. Are we getting close to that buzzer? He's about
First bell, pretty close.
All right, that means I'm going to give you 5 minutes here in a second to ask anything because I want you all to know you are special. It's a special congregation. I was disappointed, not because I was disappointed I couldn't be here last year because I miss the community that's here. So thank you for what you do. You are very special, and I want you to know that what you're doing is making an impact. So is there anybody who has any comments, questions? If not, we'll have 5 minutes of awkward silence, and that's beautiful too because... So, you know, I've always wondered how they calculate that, and I'm not exactly sure now. One of the beauties about Healing Hands is that we know we can't do it all. And we honestly don't have places all over the place where we actually have, but we partner with so many. So that, one of the beauties is like when there's a disaster in a country where maybe we don't have any connection, we start connecting with local churches and preaching. At one point it was over 70 countries. I'm not exactly sure because that's a lot of times I'm just like, I think in the water mindset, and we've been in 20 countries alone in just water. And so in that mindset, I can say 20 on that because that's a number I look at all the time. But at one time I heard it was over 70 countries. And that could be anywhere from disaster relief to Magi to agricultural training to Women of Hope, the Women Empowerment Program, to medical assistance, countless things. So.
Has the pandemic caused any problems, a lack of funds or the lowering of funds?
For like donations coming in? Actually, I will say that Healing Hands has been blessed, that people still have wanted to continue to work knowing that even though we're in a pandemic here, that the world's in a bigger pandemic. You know, COVID just didn't hit the United States, and it's still affecting a lot of our places where we do, but thankfully, we've been blessed. Walk for Water alone last year, you thought, wow, what would happen to that? And we still had 22 events. Several more virtual, kind of like you all did. But we still had 22 events. And you look at the statistics and you think, well, that's a down year. I mean, because this year we're on pace to have 48 walks. But at the same time, people, I'll never forget a church in Georgia, and they had their walk scheduled for May. And of course, that's when everything was shut down. And they said, you know what? Well, a lot of walks were like, well, let's just postpone until September and see where we're at and see the spring walks, and then they eventually just canceled for the year. But they said, you know what? They were the first virtual walk. We had actually done this little thing for fun with Facebook where we put out just all of our walk people, hey, walk in place. You know you're at home, you're stuck. Just get out and walk in your neighborhood, carry some water, just as an encouragement to keep that we missed everybody. They said, hey, let's expand it and let's do a walk because we realize that there's a need for clean water now, not in September. And so they went ahead and did that. So, but to answer your question, we were very fortunate to have faithful support to continue on.
Are we still marking the wells? In the past, we saw plaques in from Lincoln Park. It was over in Haiti. And that was encouraging just for people here to see that. But do you still do that?
We do if it's requested. You know, a lot of times somebody might do one in honor or memory of someone, but in general, unless it's in memory and honor of, we don't. But we still do. I mean, matter of fact, good.
Sean, what goes into the decision of where these wells are going to be drilled?
So as you know, Haiti is where we drilled a lot, and then we shifted, and we're doing a lot of contracting drilling around the world. So one of the places, we started working with a lot of preaching schools around the world, and some of our ag trainers who teach the agricultural part of it, and they are obviously in the country, and they're out in areas, and they give us requests of where wells are needed. And so as they bring in those requests, then we evaluate and say, okay, and so usually we're able to meet where they want to drill. So that could be connected to a church. Maybe that school, that preaching school, is sending preachers into a community that doesn't have a church yet, and so they might want a well there. A lot of factors, but that usually goes into the people we're working with in country that are overseeing our wells being drilled. We're like, okay, where are some places? And obviously that list continues to grow, because if you put a well in somebody else's community, guess what the next community wants? A well. But that's kind of how we do that to find out. So it's a lot of finding out, okay, here are some places. We've done agricultural work here. They really need a well. And that's one of the things, as I kind of wrap this up, is really neat is we stepped back about 5 years ago and said, okay, we're doing magi here, we're doing water here, we're doing agriculture, we're doing all over the place. Let's try to look at some communities and do whole transformational thing. And that doesn't mean going in and say, okay, we know what you need, here's what you get. That's asking them what they want. And in one community, they had already had an agriculture training, but they were like, hey, we really need water. And so then we were able to do water, and then we were able to do our Women of Hope program there, and it was like a whole little thing that came together in that community. So sometimes it's finding out their needs. A lot of times it does come from, we've done something there, and 90% of the time, the number one request is, we need water.
Do you, I don't know if I missed this, but are the workers back building wells again?
In Haiti, so we're still drilling all around the world. So we have contract drill. We don't own drilling rigs all around the world, unless you guys want to start donating millions of dollars to buy those things. So we contract. They're going on in Africa all over the place right now. Some are in rainy season, they're not drilling. In the dry season, they are. In Haiti, so 2019, our driller, who was on Healing Hand staff, retired, and we had perfect plan of volunteer drillers that were going to come down and actually use the drilling rig. It was going to be great. 2020 came along, pandemic. 2021, we still haven't gotten to that point, but they're still repairing wells and working. And those guys you saw in the picture that were building those houses, that's some of our crew in Haiti.
Did they see much of the COVID around with the locals?
Yeah, there were several places like in Zimbabwe where we do a lot of drilling, and places like that where the country went on complete lockdown. So in 2020, I mean, it was worse than our lockdown. There was nothing going on. So yeah.
Sean, we're out of time.
Oh, we're out of time. Did you ring a bell?
Not yet, I'm giving you another 30 seconds.
I didn't even hear the first bell. Well, that means that time flew for me, so hopefully it did for you. And look forward to worshiping with you this morning, and then sticking around for the tailgating festivities that are going to be. If you're wondering why half your parking lot's blocked this morning, blame it on Matt.